How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex. I'm that co-host here, Ryan Garcia, and today we want to discuss Anthony Rizzo. Now, Rizzo was on a 2-year, $32 million contract with a player option after the 2022 season, and now the Yankees are kind of looking at an interesting situation in the fact that Rizzo could end up declining that option. In fact, he's expected to decline that option, which will put them in a position where they have to figure out, do you want to extend him for more years? Does he want more money? Do you look elsewhere for a first baseman? There's a lot of questions that are about to unfold and unravel here for whoever is the general manager of the Yankees, which is the expected Brian Cashman. That's the expected, result, is that Hal Steinbrenner will extend him for the near future and, for the future, however many years we'll see in the coming days. But Rizzo ended up being a very nice player for this team. He's very consistent. He showed up during the postseason, didn't ever question anything. He was an everyday solid individual who we could rely on at first base. Yes, he has a little bit of that chronic lower back issue, but he managed it pretty well, missed a couple games, easing his workload. But altogether, I was really impressed with him. We want to talk about his numbers, his impact, his influence, and what kind of contract might suffice for Rizzo moving forward, Ryan. But, before we dive into things, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great. The offseason definitely, I guess I'm just coping at this point, but there's some fun. And I guess in the speculations and the talking about the offseason, there's a lot of ways this team can go, a lot of different directions. But one of the directions I would like this team to go is in terms of Anthony Rizzo, bringing him back, right? I was very happy with what Anthony Rizzo gave the Yankees. I know the defense kind of took a step back in terms of the outs above average and defensive runs saved. But as you mentioned, some back issues, right? His outs above average got progressively better throughout the season, which is a good thing. I mean, that tells me that maybe perhaps in the beginning of the season, he wasn't, as comfortable. His range wasn't there yet. Maybe, over the offseason when players aren't able to communicate with teams, with that lockout, perhaps it was hard for him to get the medical attention he needed with his back. I know Jameson Town mentioned during the offseason how difficult it was for him when he was getting his surgery, for him to, find the right people to consult with for medically because he couldn't talk to team doctors. Perhaps that's something that happened with Rizzo, but the bat with Rizzo was phenomenal, right? He hit, well over what I anticipated he would hit. He would hit a lot better than I think a lot of people give him credit for. People are going to look at that 224 average, but he had a 132 WRC plus. He slugged 480. He hit 32 home runs in just 130 games. He walked 10% of the time, struck out 18.4% of the time. That high ISO of 256, which is again isolated power. That's a metric that we use. That you take slugging percentage, you subtract batting average from it, and you end up with a number over 200 is really good. Under 200 isn't great. When you're sitting at 256 and you're also, not striking out a lot, that's a rare combination. He pulls a lot of fly balls as a left-handed hitter. That's big for the Yankees. I look at Rizzo as just the perfect 3-hitter for this team, right? You're going to look at this market and the Yankees are obviously going to try to explore and see all their options. But I implore a lot of Yankee fans to ask themselves how many guys are going to give the Yankees, at first base, an OPS well over 800, a low strikeout rate, great power, and a good veteran leadership in this clubhouse. A guy you could put in the third spot, fourth spot, leadoff spot, second spot, fifth spot, very versatile on the top of the lineup. It just doesn't exist on this market. This isn't a bad market for position players, but Rizzo definitely stands out as, the best fit for the Yankees at first base. There's a Jose Abreu on the market and he's pretty good, and Josh Bell's on the market and he's pretty good as well. But the difference there is Bell's pretty inconsistent. You don't really, he's up and down every year. And Jose Abreu, that's a guy who didn't hit for as much power this year and is a right-handed hitter. So you don't really know how that's going to play in Yankee Stadium, and you like having that protection with Rizzo there. So, I just think that this fit is too good for the Yankees to pass up on. And I think Rizzo and the Yankees are too much, mutually in respect for each other for them not to come to an agreement on a deal.
It's crazy looking at his defensive metrics. Somehow he has -3 defensive runs saved above average. How does that even make sense? Seeing all the balls he scooped out of the dirt this year, the IKF throws that were a little bit wayward. I feel like Rizzo saved this team at times with his defense at first base. Maybe they didn't save runs, but, at the end of the day, I feel like it's a metric that kind of goes under the table, those scooped out of the dirt balls. But Rizzo offensively, was stout. Like you mentioned a couple episodes ago, the Yankees need killers during the postseason, and Rizzo was one of them. He is a guy you can count on. Obviously, from a lefty perspective, he can hit a home run at any given moment. In the postseason this year, he had 276 with a 43% on base rate, 2 homers and 8 RBIs, a 13.5% walk rate. He really took it to another level for the Yankees this playoffs. And with that being said, you need guys like that. You need guys who are going to step up, and the Yankees didn't have many of them. Judge didn't step up. Stanton kind of stepped up. Gleyber Torres faltered. Donaldson faltered. IKF faltered. Harrison Bader stepped up. This is a squad that Jose Trevino didn't step up offensively. Nobody really, except for Rizzo and Bader, really, held their own and helped this offense tremendously. The question is, how much are you willing to give Anthony Rizzo? Maybe you sign him to the exact same contract, a 2-year, $32 million deal with an out after the first year. Maybe they just replicate that deal, because honestly, it seems pretty fair to me after this season. 132 WRC plus, so 32% better than the average player, hit 224 with a 34% on base rate, did hit 32 homers at 75 RBI. So maybe those home runs suggest that he's back to his top self. He did hit 32 back in 2017, the last time he reached 30. So maybe those home run totals give him a little bit more monetary, confidence going into this offseason. Do you think that a similar deal makes sense for him given the age? He is 33 years old now, going to be 34 years old. Do you think he's going to earn more than $60 million per season on the open market?
Well, I think maybe some team might offer him $17, $18 million, but as you mentioned, he's getting up there in age. The value for first baseman, I mean, I'm gonna look at WAR here. The 2.4 WAR on paper isn't great, but again, for first baseman, that defensive adjustment is pretty hard. And as you mentioned with scoops, that isn't completely factored into stuff like outs above average and defensive run saved. So it's a little difficult for us to perfectly gauge how valuable a first baseman is defensively. We can argue the defensive adjustments are a little too harsh, and thus, for first baseman, their WAR is going to typically be lower than other positions. So we have to scale it as such. But Rizzo, in terms of wins above replacement, straight up, WAR per dollar, what that value gives us. He was worth $19.3 million this year. Last year's worth $17 million. So yeah, $60 million just makes sense, right? You have to anticipate that Rizzo, you have to anticipate for some sort of regression, because that's always possible. And I think the market will play out like that. This isn't a guy who was necessarily putting up, like MVP numbers, but I think $16 million, as you mentioned, maybe go 2 years with a third year for like a club option, right? That might be something that Rizzo might do. But I think, ultimately the Yankees are going to want to have Rizzo back. I wouldn't be shocked if he's the first signing they make. I would not be shocked if you see Rizzo to the Yankees, before December, right? Like, I think it's going to happen very quickly. I think that's something that, I'd be like, we talked about how confident we are that Judge is going to retain, the Yankees are going to try to retain Judge. I am so confident they're going to bring back Rizzo, just because with Judge, you could say, well, what if they traded for Brian Reynolds and then signed Brandon Nimmo and then spent some money on pitching? Maybe they diversify the financial, they put their money in a bunch of different places. But for Rizzo, where are you putting your first base assets? Who's that guy you're trading for? There's not a Matt Olson or Freddie Freeman on the market. Is Jose Abreu not going to get the same type of contract? It's like you're spending less. Is Josh Bell not going to get the same type of contract? Not really spending less, not really saving money. So I feel like the Yankees, there's no reason for them not to have Anthony Rizzo on their team next year. I think, as you mentioned, 2 years, $60 million AAV, maybe that third year, maybe throwing a third year as a club option. I have 105% certainty Rizzo comes back. I would be stunned, floored if Rizzo. I haven't even entertained looking at other first basemen, because I am just so confident this is the best fit for the Yankees. And it'd be foolish, honestly, for them to look anywhere else, unless, again, a trade opens up for a guy we haven't really, anticipated would be open on the market. But I don't see that. I don't even see other first basemen that necessarily entice me that I know. Like, Vlad's not going to be traded. Freeman's not going to be traded. Olson's not going to be traded. Alonso's not going to be traded. Ty France not going to be traded. Those are guys off the top of my head that I think are like those elite first basemen. Goldschmidt's not going to be traded. So once we get past those guys, Rizzo guy I want to go with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, ultimately, you're looking at the value he brings. They love that lefty slugger from, just at first base in general. They wanted Matt Olson. They looked at Freddie Freeman, too expensive, whatever it might be. Rizzo makes the most sense. He's the best option for this team right now. And I think that that's kind of going to remain the same. That's going to remain pretty consistent moving forward here, my friends. But I'd love to hear your perspectives below on Rizzo. If you think they should extend him, I think, Ryan and I are in agreement that he's an essential part to this team and that he should be retained, even if they have to pay him a little bit more to, get that same exact deal across the board. Maybe they give him $18 million per year over 2 years with an opt-out after next season. I could see that being another realistic thing that the Yankees try to do, but it seems like maybe he might want a little bit more security, because the fact that he's going to opt out basically means that he knows he's worth more. Maybe he gets locked in for a couple seasons. Maybe he gets 2 years at $36 million guaranteed. And 18 million for him over the next 2 years, I think is more than fair because his play eventually is going to regress, just due to age and the back problems that he has faced in the past. So definitely excited to hear your opinions, perspectives, and narratives below in the YouTube comments. As always, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.